It had been at least 2, 3, 4 years since he had last seen her. They hadn't spoken then. The rage was too recent, the accusations too recent, the betrayals too raw. Then she just looked at him with eyes shooting flames of hell. He said nothing, but smiled slightly, savoring the moment. Then they went their separate ways as their destiny demanded. There she was, walking through the park. She hadn't seen him yet. Even from a distance, it was obvious that she was a broken, hollowed-out shell of a human being, but still as hot as the day he'd first met her at the university, or high school, or the old neighborhood, or a friend's party, or the RV he'd had to drive back to the dealer. Of course, that was back when he was just starting out as a simple locksmith, or carpenter, or car salesman, or a guy who builds quality houses, or a Ford Mustang aficionado, or an IT guy who focused on security and had access to all kinds of cool surveillance equipment, or a self-employed business owner who managed to hide the ownership of that company in a group of shell corporations in the Cayman Islands that no one knew about, or when he was just being trained as a SWAT sniper who could barely contain himself back then, she was just a secretary or a real estate agent. That had to be his clue. Almost every secretary he'd ever read about slept with her boss on trips out of town, and every female real estate agent seemed to have a cocky salesman in her unsuspecting husband's marital bed when she really should have been showing houses. But he was young and stupid then. He didn't know the signs, like the one that no one who is an executive takes a secretary on a business trip. Ever. And for a female real estate agent, her commissions should have been much higher than they were for all the time she had to sell houses, especially since the real estate market has been so hot in recent years. But wisdom comes too late, as they say, useless. She saw him and approached with a sad smile. "You look good," she said. He knew it. He had lost 30 pounds of fat and replaced it with 20 pounds of muscle. These days, he spent his time at the gym in a garment of cotton tights. His firm quadriceps and buttocks had women enthralled at first sight, and now quarters could bounce off his well-developed pecs and abs. The girls in his post-divorce two-legged harem certainly would. "You look like a broken, guilt-ridden shell of a bitch who ruined the only good thing she had in her life, all for a shadowy existence of meaningless deception motivated by a base desire for meaningless sex outside the sacred bonds of matrimony with your ex-boyfriend that you never got over," he told her. "And/or some girl or girls," he added. "I know," she said. "I'm racked with guilt. This is my punishment." "I know," he said. They fell silent. "You never gave me a chance to explain myself," she said. It was true. "Why make excuses?" he asked with genuine curiosity. "I had to," she replied. "I feel trapped in a Pirandello play where I am forced to say many words to clarify motives that even I don't understand, but which simply show my inability to accept my own selfishness. The unwritten rules of the forum seem to require it," she added, looking him in the eye in a desperate desire to understand. "I suppose that's true," he admitted. They stood looking at each other, wondering what might have been if he hadn't loved her so much that he hadn't discovered her deceptions, and if she hadn't been a complete and total lying whore who was trying to get a run-down omelet behind her back with a dozen lovers. He glanced at his watch. "Look," he said, "I don't have much time. I need to get back to my hot harem." "I know," she said, "and I need to get back to my life of loneliness and despair, where my only excitement is watching toxic mold grow on the walls of my slum-like apartment." "Right," he said, "your explanations. You never wanted to hurt me. It was just sex. I never had to find out. I wasn't losing anything over your affairs, so it didn't matter. You wanted one last affair before we had kids. You needed one last fling before the kids finally moved out of the house. You just needed some excitement as you got older. You just couldn't get enough of sex, even if you did love me. He had compromising pictures and videos that you just couldn't stand because... And if I had just given you a second chance, you would have spent the rest of your life trying your best to win my love back. Oh, and you're sorry I found out and got hurt. But you're a little unclear as to whether you even regret wasting your whole life." He paused. "Did I miss anything?" he asked. She thought for a moment. "You said most of it. You only missed the part where we were in a vicious cycle where you busted your ass working to build a life for us and give me everything I wanted or needed, which meant you were away a lot. And you didn't give me the attention I wanted, which is what got me to this point, even though I really should have had some self-control in the first place. You also left out the part about how your only mistake was that instead of loving me, you roughly fucked me like I really wanted and needed it, because underneath all that, guys, I really am a slut who likes nothing better than telling her lovers how much bigger and better they are than you, even though that's not what I meant. Or at least I'm telling you that's not what I meant. Right. Sorry. They both smiled slightly. You know, she began, at first I really hated you after you discovered I was having a rendezvous in our marital bed with 7 of my lovers, all of whom you shot in cold blood when you burst into our bedroom and spun around in slow motion, hovering over the bed like a panther, showering 9mm bullets like tears on the oak parquet floor, crying for our wasted lives, just like in a John Woo movie, and then skillfully hiding their lifeless bodies while I lay in a catatonic state with bits of their brains splattered all over mine. After their bodies disappeared, the police were never able to connect you to their disappearance. You returned to me, still in a catatonic state, to take me in your strong arms, throw me in the trunk of a car, and drive me out so I could see that you sold my colluding sisters and mother to a Mexican brothel. And then you sold me to Somali pirates who performed female genital mutilation on me with a rusty razor and without anesthesia, which is really quite unpleasant and painful, and then you cleaned out our bank and retirement accounts using a power of attorney that I had long forgotten about. Or forged them. She frowned concentratedly. Or did you clear our accounts before you found us? Before, he said. But then I laundered the money so your lawyer didn't find anything. Right. Anyway, I'm over all that now. I've completely forgiven you. That's good, he said. Internalizing anger leads to heart disease. Scientists have done studies. I know, she said. They looked at each other in silence again. She frowned. I think you have something to say, she reminded him. What? About trust. He looked at her dully. You know, she prompted, about how without trust there's nothing? That? Oh, yeah, he agreed embarrassedly. Thank you. Well, it's true. Without trust, there's nothing. She thought for a moment. What if you could trust me again? Do you think I could fool you again? You know you can trust. I don't think that would happen. Good, she said with a sigh as her shoulders slumped. After another moment, she looked at him hopefully. Is there any chance you could forgive me? He allowed himself to be shocked. It was necessary. You mean just forget everything? Get back together again just like that? Get married again so that once more I can make my money, which would have grown exponentially after the divorce while you cheat on me again? You want me to act like I'll ever be able to trust you again? Is that what you mean? Are you really talking such nonsense? Yes, that's what I mean. And yes, I suppose it's really delusional. We're talking about it, aren't we? I could be, he thought. After all, he had loved her once. He had loved her helplessly, hopelessly, deeply. His current harem gave him amazing sex, but no real emotional fulfillment. And many, it seemed, would see such a scenario as a serious possibility and couldn't condemn it. Could he? Hell no, no, no. I know, she said. Still, I thought I'd ask. She thought for a moment. Did you ever think we could at least be friends? He thought about it. Would you let me beat you up on you publicly to show my contempt for you? And give me the names of all your surviving ex-lovers so I can hunt down the ones I couldn't find and brutally beat them nearly to death one last time so I can finish the job now? She smiled coquettishly. If that's what it takes to rebuild a relationship, she said, looking at him with a slight wistfulness. Maybe we could have coffee, he said, shrugging. Of course, I'd have to pour it in your face while it's hot while I scream at you with all my still-burning rage. It's a date, she said with a wide smile, exposing her rotting teeth. With that, they parted again and plunged into their all-too-mundane future.